you can bring skilled players and then great players together and can win, they're going to have a parade going down Flatbush Avenue.
Albert, thanks for joining us here today at the Barclays Center at the Bulleit Bar inside the Barclays Center. It's such an honor to sit here with a legend that's given so much to the game, man. How you doing, man? Over these great cocktails, by the way.
I'm doing great. Great atmosphere, great company. It should be a good time. I'm looking forward to it.
So let's talk about, you growing up in Brooklyn and, what was that like for you?
Well, I grew up in an area called Fort Greene, right close to the Barclays Center on Myrtle Avenue back in the 60s. It's changed a lot, but it was good times. Grew up in the projects, played ball outside with the school in the area, and it's changed a lot, but it's always going to be Fort Greene to me.
I mean, so I grew up in Bed-Stuy. What's it like for you to have the Barclays Center here right in the middle of, downtown Brooklyn?
I think the one thing that's not good about it should have happened back in the 80s. Then I might have had the opportunity to play here. That would have been great to be at the Barclays Center coming from Fort Greene. But to be able to walk past this place back in the 70s and seeing how it looks now with the Barclays Center, the development that is taking place, but more importantly, the great team that they have now. The big three plus everyone else. Everybody wants to be at the Barclays Center. It's the place to be.
And we're gonna talk about that big three, later. But let's talk about the players from back in the day, the Nets players whose impact could still be felt today.
I think one of the biggest ones has to be Dr. J. We go back to the ABA. A lot of young people might not know about that name, Dr. J. They need to Google it. He started it back in the ABA. Then you go on to the 80s. They have players, Hall of Famer, should be Buck Williams. He was one of the great players back then in the 80s. I was in there too. And a couple other players, Mike Jaminski, Michael Ray Richardson, Orissa Bergson back from the 80s. You move forward to the great teams they had with Jason Kidd, Vince Carter, Mr. Dunk Machine, and a lot of the other players out there.
And one thing about New York, especially Brooklyn, in our opinion, as Brooklynites, I say, playground basketball, like it's historic here. What was that scene like for you, and how did it influence your game, to go on to be an NBA player?
You travel around the country, you hear about California, you hear about Chicago, you hear about everywhere else, but playground basketball, I think, started here in Brooklyn. Not Bed-Stuy, not just Manhattan, not Queens. It started in the whole borough of Brooklyn. That's where you really started to play ball. When you played on the playground, you made your name. Either you got dunked on, or they shake and bake you, and the crowd just ooh and ah. But playing on the playground is where your game was developed. If you couldn't make it there, you're not gonna make it. The big thing that I loved about playing on the playground was that you could play in the summertime, you could play when it's snowing, you get the shovel, you just shovel the snow away, you get out there and you just ball. It was great playing in those days.
And what was that stage like? Because, when we think of places like Rucker Park and, West 4th, the Cage, and these places, like, what was that scene like? Like, walk us through going to these games and the pressure, you felt to perform well.
Well, I didn't feel no pressure. I was the best. It didn't matter to me. But the big thing is, it started from the time you left your house until you walked to that playground. Mm-hmm. And when you walk to that playground, you had to be cool about it, because you had to walk through the fence. So you don't want to rush in there. So you want to walk in real slow so they see you. And they walk in and they go, yo, man, Al King's here. Or whoever it may be. You get ready for that game. There was no announcers. There was no music being played. It was just you get on the court and you play ball.
And you mentioned like the lights being on and nighttime games, and that's kind of like the vibe I get when I'm watching the game here at the Barclays Center. How do you feel about the scene and the vibe that is set here in the Barclays?
I love it. Not just the game itself, but what's happening behind the game. Unfortunately now with COVID, you don't have a lot of the things that you could have during a normal season, but I love the music. I love rocking to it. I love the crowd, the way they get involved, the dancers, everything else they have going on in the stands. It makes basketball a lot more exciting. When you're on the playground back then, that was different. But when you're playing basketball now, to have these other things going on, it just makes you as a player, I would assume, just to make it more live. You run out, you hear the music, you see the crowd, you get it going.
So how does that compare to when you were playing in the NBA, and like what was the vibe like in the arenas then?
You had where you run out the tunnel, you had the crowd, but you had the little short shorts. They're coming back. They're coming back. They're coming back. We had the little short shorts. We had different type of uniforms, but basketball is basketball. I think one thing that I say about basketball, if you're on the playground, you're in this big arena, no matter where you're at. When you step on that court, it's all about basketball.
So I think it's time, to try these cocktails here.
Hey, cheers to you, brother.
Cheers to us.
You got it. Smooth.
That's nice. That's nice.
Wow.
Yeah, I might need to
nice taste.
bring this a little closer over here.
But no, it's very smooth, very smooth.
So let's talk about going back. Like, what was those? I named like places like West Fourth and and the Rucker. What was those places for you back in the day where you were like, yo, I have to go here, and if I go to this park, if I go to this tournament, I have to go crazy.
The top place that people know about is Rucker Park. You play at Rucker Park, you're gonna get a name made for yourself. So playing there was the ultimate. Some places that I loved playing in Brooklyn, it was called Bulleit. It was a place that the court was down low and the stands were a little higher, and they put the lights on. Around 7 o'clock, you go out there and you have the last game, because they play the best teams last. So you play, the lights come on, and the big thing about that place was that one rim was 10 feet high. Some people didn't know, the other one was around 9.5, so it was a little easier to dunk. So we used to love to have that side of the court. But Bulleit was great. A place called St. John Recreation Center. That's where you can make a name for yourself. And another place I used to always love to go play playground ball is Foster Park. It's a small little place that a lot of people didn't know about.
Your brother, Bernard King. Let's talk about, what it was like watching him dominate, growing up, and did that motivate you to become, who you are?
He was pretty good. He was all right.
And for the people who don't know, let's
I'm gonna educate
let's give your brother.
I'm gonna educate them. Bernard, Hall of Famer, scored 60 on you in a minute in his sleep. Give you that baseline jumper. You couldn't stop him. Even in high school, he was always the same. He was always someone that had this killer instinct that wanted to go out there and just rip your heart out. It was something that I didn't emulate, but I appreciated what he did, and I really loved watching him play on the playground. And
it's so dope to hear people like Melo. It's like, yo, man, that's my idol. Like what do you think that means to have these younger players looking back, because the game has changed so much, and you don't really play the same way you played back in the day. But what does that mean to kind of like feel like your brother or your game is just timeless and it's just always going to be there?
Well, Bernard, I think he could have played in the era when he played. He could play now. When you could score, you score. He didn't shoot the three-point shot, but he came down that lane and you weren't going to stop him. And the younger players, what I think what they appreciate more about him is that how he came back from his knee injury. You don't see that a lot. He came back, he became an all-star again. So again, I have to take a lot of that credit, because when he was in the NBA, I had to practice against him in the summertime. So he had to develop those moves on someone. So he developed them on me.
So, when you were coming up, like you said, you were the best, but who were some of the other players that stood out to you that you were like, all right, this dude might be a problem. He's a good player.
I think it was my second year. This rookie, he came down the lane. They used to say that, you gotta watch this guy. He's gonna come down the lane and he's gonna go at you. So he was coming on a fast break. They threw him the ball in the middle. So I said, let me see what he has. He took off from that dot and that circle within the dot, and he just went up. So I said, I'm going up. He's going up, I'm going up. But then he kept going up. And boom, he just dunked. I fell. My teammate Buck Williams, I have to give him some credit too. He tried to go up too. He fell.
Are you bringing Buck into it too?
I gotta bring somebody else into it. Dominique Wilkins.
Damn. So did you ever jump with Dominique again after that?
No.
And you pulled your boy Buck Williams into this, getting dunked on. So I'm gonna give you a chance to, to make good with Buck. Let's talk about your relationship with him and, and what that meant, playing with him and being one of your good friends.
We started out in college together. We played 3 years at the University of Maryland. He came from Rocky Mount. I'm gonna throw him under the bus again. He was a country boy when he first came to Maryland University. After college, we were both drafted into the NBA. He was number 3 by the Nets in 1981. I was number 10. So we moved along for 6 years playing in the pros. Buck Williams was one of the greatest and hardest working players I've ever seen. He was strong. He knew how to set the pick, which I loved. He developed his game from just being a rebounder into being an all-around player. So Buck Williams is, Dr. J is number 1. You might have Jason Kidd in there as greatest players. He has to be right up there in the top 3.
So let's talk about the big 3 that we have on our current Nets roster. And, what do you like about their individual games and who's making the biggest impact in the game today?
Well, I'll start with Kevin Durant. Having a big guy at that size that could just move and just could shoot 3-pointers, take it to the hole, I think that you can't have anything to defend against him. He could go inside, he could go outside, he could just take over the game. James Harden, I'm very surprised when he came in here, what he's been doing. In Houston, he was more of a one-on-one player and he's always shooting the ball. He has developed, or he has it before, and we didn't see it before, the way he's playing as far as playing as a team, but being a playmaker, distributing the ball, but he can still score. I think that, and then you have your point guard, the superstar that can score, can handle. The one thing is, when you say handle, everyone can dribble, but the ball is like part of his hand. I think that's what makes him and Curry. They have something where the ball goes where the hand goes, and you don't know how to defend them. So when you talk about the big 3, it's very hard to have 3 superstars playing on the same team, because you really don't know who's going to have you have to have guys who are going to play defense, that are going to set picks, and everything else that goes with the game, but they have incorporated it all somehow. And it'd be good to have them all 3 playing again, but it's going to be hard in the NBA. It's going to be hard for anyone to beat them.
And going back to that, there was a lot of doubt around, if they can make it work, right? And they're having success with 3 stars. Them being here on this team, what do you think, this will mean for their legacy moving forward?
If they could continue to improve and play the way they're playing, it's just going to show that you can bring skilled players and then great players together and can win. They're going to have a parade going down Flatbush Avenue, and it's just going to show that they have sacrificed a little bit of their game for the better of the team. And right now, the wins and losses are showing that they know that I make a lot of money, I'm one of the best, but I'm going to sacrifice to win, and they're doing that.
Sorry, I want to cheers, man, to just you being here.
Same to you, brother.
Sharing your legacy and having these future players continue it.
No, great success to you, and I'm glad to be here, having a great time. Hope to see everybody here at the Bulleit Bar. It'll be nice during the season.
At the
Come
Barclays
out here
Center.
and just meet some people.
Only place, Barclays Center.
Thank you.